I'm ready.
Hi, welcome to the Fix Your Gut, the live stream. My name is Jason Hooper, and we're here with John Brisson for another Q&A.
Hope everybody's doing okay.
So I just took an entire box of Unfair Advantage, just slammed all of them. I didn't really, but that'd be cool. It says for sports performance, take 2 to 4, and I wanted it to be at the next level, so I took 30. It's always good to overdo your supplements. Not really. Don't do that. It will create.
Quit giving out bad advice.
It will it will create so many mitochondria in your cells that they will explode from the mitochondrial density.
And so you'll die from it?
All your cells will just, no, you won't die. That's the weird thing.
Okay.
You just get really upgraded. It's awesome.
I don't think that's what happens, but okay. It'll send you into the future, I guess.
Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell this story or not, but Dave said that they sent him like a 2-liter bottle of Unfair Advantage. And he didn't drink it all at once, obviously, but like the lab that makes this sent him a ton of it, and he took like a pretty large dose. He said it felt pretty good, but I don't think he's ever taken 30 before, and it's just a joke. I didn't either. But anyway, if you want to get some free Unfair Advantage, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're giving some out every week. So make sure you subscribe. Today, we're doing another Q&A, which is fun, and we hope to.
Questions, people, we love them.
Yeah, I really like doing the Q&As. So thanks for sending your questions, and hopefully we can answer them correctly.
Hope so, anyway.
Yeah, it's tough when you're doing things live and we kind of get in a conversation. There's been a couple of episodes where I've gone back and there's been some uh-ohs, I said the wrong dose or something, or like messed up a number here or there. So be careful.
Yeah, we all make mistakes, Jason. We all, some things you can't think of properly when you're in the heat of the moment.
Make sure you fact check, especially on supplements, because sometimes there was one where we said like milligrams instead of micrograms.
That was me. That was
my K2
on vitamin K. It was
that would be bad. And on another podcast, I said like take a whole box of Unfair Advantage because it makes you awesome. That's an overdose too. So don't do that. Anyway, first question is regarding magnesium citrate. I stated on another podcast that magnesium citrate may not be good for mitochondrial energy. And so this person responded and said, does that count for all forms of citrate, like potassium citrate? I thought it was good for energy production. More details, please. So right now, open up an extra tab in your browser and do an image search for the Krebs cycle, Krebs. Krebs cycle, or as it's called, the citric acid cycle. And you'll see how ATP is made from it's not just from carbohydrate, not just from glucose, but also from amino acids and lipids through beta oxidation. And you'll see how substrates enter into the Krebs cycle and how they leave the Krebs cycle. And you'll see how that citric acid is the last product created in the Krebs cycle. So think about this from a standpoint of entropy and the second law of thermodynamics. It is natural for things to spread out. If you have a glass of water and you put a drop of blue dye in the water, it spreads out in the water and it makes the water blue. It doesn't just sink to the bottom and sit there. That's not how it works. And so when things are more complicated, they tend to spread out into less complicated forms. So dense, we have density and then less dense. The same thing. So if we have an overabundance of citrate in the cells, it makes it more difficult for these enzymatic reactions to occur to make to make ATP. So let's just say you have a molecule of glucose and it enters the Krebs cycle, and every single reaction that goes through it hits an enzyme. Enzyme makes ATP, and there's a byproduct, and then it goes to the next enzyme, so on and so forth. The problem is the enzymes are there to make the reactions more efficient. They don't they don't always increase reaction potential, and reaction potential can go both ways in any biological reaction. So we have to be aware of that too. So if we have too much citrate in the cell, we have with citric acid in the cell, we have a lot of citric acid here, and it's going to limit the reaction potential of other substrates from leading up to citric acid. So it's really hard to demonstrate without visuals and just using my hands. So just kind of look at the Krebs cycle and follow along and see how it works. And if there's theoretically if there's too much citrate in the cell, it might down convert, back to through the acetyl CoA and even through oxaloacetate, and just go backwards, and you'll actually lose ATP through those reactions. So does that count for all forms of citrate? Yes, it does. And even like the citric acid that you would eat from citrus fruits. So it's actually not good for energy production. If you want things that are better for energy production, you need to eat some of the substrates that are on the other side of the citric acid cycle. So your malates, your oxaloacetates, pyruvic acid.
Get some malic acid from apples.
Yeah, you could get it from apples, or you could just take magnesium malate instead of magnesium citrate.
Do you really think eating a citrus fruit every now and then would have that much of an impact? If you're extraordinarily healthy.
Well, I'm not saying, okay, so that's a good question. And sometimes when we listen to things, we take things a little out of context and we go too far with them. And,
the literal way of looking at it, I guess.
So if I drop a lot of blue dye in a glass of water, it's going to make the water really blue. But if I take the same, like a small drop of blue dye, and I put it into a swimming pool, will you even be able to tell? Probably not. So but then again, so if you eat some citrus fruit, or you eat, magnesium citrate, or wherever you get some citric acid, it's going to make a minimal difference. But over time, if you take a supplement and you keep taking magnesium malate instead of citrate, over time, you will get a net benefit. Just like if you keep dumping blue dye into a swimming pool, eventually that pool will turn blue. So there are some it does have consequences, but that doesn't mean you should just be afraid of citrus fruits or whatever. If you enjoy them, you can eat them once in a while. It's fine. And they are high in fructose and citric acid and stuff, so they're not the best. I mean, it'd be better to eat berries, but if you drink a glass of orange juice, it's probably not going to kill you or your children in their sleep or anything.
Orange juice.
So I hope that this has brought some closure. It's a complicated topic, so I can see why there's some confusion, and it's hard for me to just verbally get information out of my head and put it into another person's head. Hopefully, if and we're just kind of testing this stream right now to see how it takes, and it's doing okay. But if it starts to do a lot better, we'll make the production value a lot higher. We'll start adding more. We can make videos and stuff to kind of show you what's going on, make some biochem videos and stuff that are practical, and we'll show you simply how these things work. All right, the next question. What is the best FODMAP carb sources? The only grains I can eat is white rice. I'm aiming to eat about 200 grams of carbs per day for general health. Can you help me find the best way to achieve this daily amount using FODMAP carb sources? I think they mean low-fat FODMAP carb sources. And in the form where this was posted, I know ACH85 already put a great answer to it and linked to the Fix Your Gut blog. But can you just walk us through some other safe low FODMAP carb sources?
Yeah, as long as you're not suffering from any Klebsiella overgrowth, which Klebsiella can ferment starches. So you want to definitely, as long as you're fine with that, which I'll get to Klebsiella later, you should be able to handle a wide variety of low FODMAP or we'll say low fermentation potential carbohydrate sources. Because it's that fermentation that causes, the unpleasant side effects with bacterial overgrowth, pain, bloating, flatulence. So there are some carb sources that you can take, that you could ingest that would be considered low FODMAP or low fermentation potential. Those would, of course, be your jasmine rice. White rice was mentioned. It's rapidly turned into glucose by the body, hopefully before the bacteria get to see any of it. Your potatoes, not your sweet potatoes, because sweet potatoes contain polyols, which are fermentable, but your regular potatoes, your red potatoes, preferably over your russet potatoes. Red potatoes are better. You have to eat them when they're hot, because once you let them cool down, they do turn into resistant starch, which is heavily fermentable. Of course, you have quinoa, which Jason and I have talked about in an earlier live stream. Don't necessarily recommend its ingestion if you have digestive issues, but some people can tolerate quinoa.
Or if you're in South America, they say quinoa.
Yeah, quinoa. Okay, just my southern drawl there, so sorry. Of course, your non-fermentable vegetables, which would mainly be more fiber than anything, and of course, your berries, as long as you can handle fructose, would be fine. And there are some other low FODMAP fruits on the diet list, but usually I only stick to recommending berries because they're the lowest in fructose. You can maybe try some butternut squash. Squash is low FODMAP and has some decent carbohydrates in there. And carrots do too. Plantains, some people can can deal with eating plantains. Tapioca, and either cassava, people can usually deal with that too without having issues. Now, if you have Klebsiella overgrowth, it's harder because Klebsiella can ferment starch. So pretty much the only thing you can do there is if you do eat jasmine rice and you are able to tolerate the Klebsiella overgrowth, you have to chew it very well because we have a little bit of amylase in our saliva. Man has developed it because that was one way we could taste for carbohydrates, to have a little bit of amylase to give that sweet taste when we bite into them, to break down a little bit in our mouth. And we also release a little bit of amylase to our pancreas too. But usually pancreatic digestion is hindered in people with SIBO. So when eating the jasmine rice, even if you don't have Klebsiella infection, you should chew it very well and try to mix it with as much amylase in your saliva as possible to help, hopefully, your body break it down before it reaches your gingium and ileum of your small intestine. Same with the potatoes, the red potatoes. You can try those with Klebsiella. If you cannot tolerate any carbohydrate sources at all as far as food is concerned, you can always get your carbohydrates through divided doses of dextrose, which should not be absorbed by the time it gets into the small intestine. Your stomach, should be able to rapidly absorb dextrose. So that would not feed any bacterial overgrowth. But that's a form of carbohydrate of last resort because you're not getting any of the nutrition that you would get from eating these other carbohydrate sources. You're getting strictly just the glucose that you would need to help your body stay out of ketosis. But those would be my recommended FODMAP sources that people can try if they're suffering from overgrowth, that won't feed their overgrowth too terribly much or make their symptoms worse, that's all the FODMAP diet is just symptom reduction.
I really like how you break down the FODMAP into its components and how it reacts to the particular overgrowth that you have. I think a lot of people, when they look at a low FODMAP diet, they reduce every one, and that may not be what you need to do. You need
Correct.
to look at all 5 components of FODMAP,
And see what you can tolerate and see what you can't tolerate. That's the future of the diet, is determining what you can tolerate and what you cannot tolerate. Oh, I can tolerate lactose, therefore I can have a little bit of lactose. Oh, I can tolerate fructose, I can have a little bit of fructose. That's the future of the diet.
And those are both disaccharides, and then dextrose, or dextrin glucose is a monosaccharide,
Correct.
which is the M in FODMAP. So yeah, you just have to figure out what your issue is, what is causing you harm, what has become opportunistic, and starve that out until it's
because
dead.
The most important, you won't kill it off. The most important thing is you want to make sure that you receive the carbohydrate source your body does before the bacteria does. That's what's most important, is keeping fermentation to a minimum. And there's some carbohydrate sources that the body is able to rapidly absorb, glucose being the quickest one, because the body loves glucose. Why would we not absorb glucose immediately through our foods?
Yeah, and it's not it's not necessarily even just like a species of bacteria that we're looking to eliminate.
Correct.
It might just be a bottleneck in your motility. I mean, there might be something that's slowing you down, and there might be a lack of MMC, or if you have some kind of break in your calcium channel proliferation, you have a bottleneck. You've got something that's hindering the flow of the train of digestive energy that's chugging down the track. If that's a good visual for you.
No, I mean, you're right, Jason. I mean, it all depends. If like, I don't eat cabbage regularly. I can tell you right now, if I had some cabbage, even though my digestion is good, it would still give me gas. And if I continue eating it for a few days in a healthy digestive system, the gas would lessen and eventually dissipate, because my intestinal microbial bacteria adapted to it. And someone who is sick, that does not occur. Their symptoms either stay the same, they can continue to have bloating, or it gets worse.
Yeah, and that could be similar for all foods.
Correct. That have fermentation potential. Meat does not.
Yeah. And yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Dave's aging formula? I received my bottle yesterday. I've taken it twice so far and don't have the slightest clue what its benefits are. I really like the aging formula from Upgraded Self. I think it's like the best supplement on Upgraded Self, unless you count like Vanilla Max and some other. I mean, there's a lot of great products on the site that I like and that I use. I met the guy who makes Dave's oxaloacetate supplement at the Biohacker Conference, the second Biohacker Conference, and really interesting guy. And he told me a lot about the supplement, and I said, a lot, it's got some great effects on, we talked about the Krebs cycle, and we, look where oxaloacetate is in the Krebs cycle and where it's going. It's right before acetyl CoA, so it's really going to provide some energy there. But the interesting thing is, and there's some studies that have been done from both, and these are peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies from the University of Michigan and another one from UCLA, so 2 independent studies that show that when you take oxaloacetate and it hits your gut, the effect happens in your brain, and vice versa. When it's injected into the brain, the effect happens into the gut. And when you have an abundance of oxaloacetate, it mimics the same physiological conditions that are going to occur when you have calorie restriction. So the body needs to convert NAD plus to NADH, and which is going to it's going to reduce a component and actually to make it an electron donor, which is great for your mitochondria. But when that also happens, it triggers cyclical AMP or adenosine monophosphate, cyclical adenosine monophosphate, and whenever that's triggered, it signals your cell at a cellular level. It signals the cells to start creating more mitochondria. So you're going to develop some mitochondrial density. So anyway, I talked to this guy and I was like, hey, people are taking this supplement. I think it's a great supplement, but they're not really sure if it's working because it's one of those subtle supplements where you don't feel it necessarily. Like you don't take it, like it's not like Unfair Advantage where it's got some ubiquinol in it to give you a little kick and you can feel it right away. For most people, it's different in that you don't necessarily get that energy spark, but it's really good for longevity, and it's really good for everything, for mental function. So he says, okay, it's you can show how fast your cells are using glucose. So take a blood glucose monitor, and you can buy one dirt cheap and get some test strips and just prick your finger and do a sample. Actually, I should have done this from the start of the show. I should have done this and showed you how it works. I thought it'd be a better visual. Maybe I'll do that on the next show because the show's about an hour. So I could prick my finger, show you my glucose levels, take some of Dave's anti-aging formula. Then by the end of the show, prick my finger again and show the drop in blood sugar. Why is the blood sugar dropping? It's because of mitochondrial efficiency, mitochondrial density. You can see in the Krebs cycle how it's being used, and it does an amazing job of it. So if you don't believe that it's a supplement that works, measure your blood glucose. It definitely does.
So it'd be very important for people who are diabetics or someone who has insulin.
Oh yeah, way more effective than some of the prescription medications that can actually, like if you take metformin, it's really difficult to get off.
I'd almost say it's more beneficial than using berberine as a natural way of doing it, because berberine also reduces gut bacteria as well as hinders the aldose reductase pathway, where that's how reduction of blood sugar takes place, is by inhibiting that pathway. Where oxaloacetate instead uses your body to use that glucose instead of you very rarely ever want to inhibit anything unless absolutely necessary. That's what a lot of conventional medicine does, is inhibit pathways. That's why statins are such bad drugs. You always want to try to utilize proper pathways or turn them back on to help people in a lot of cases.
Yeah, so go back and watch our diabetes episode. I think that's number 6. I'm not sure. Go check it out. I probably just made another mistake. It's probably like number 5. But go back, check it out, and see and listen to that. We talk about I talk about my experience with metformin and how I gave myself diabetes and how I recovered from it. All right, next question. Which probiotics eat oxalates, and can you recommend a product?
Okay, there's about 3 probiotics that eat oxalates. There's Oxalobacter formigenes. With Oxalobacter, there is no supplement. There's no probiotic supplement that you can take, to my knowledge, that's on the market that will increase it. Now, you can increase it through proper diet, and making sure that you're getting the proper prebiotics, like maybe galactolysaccharides on occasion on your diet and stuff like that, and eating sauerkraut and so forth and so on. As far as Oxalobacter is concerned, there's no supplement. Now but hold on, we are lucky because there are 2 probiotic genuses that do help break down oxalates, oxalate degrading bacteria, so they call them, in the intestinal tract. Those would be Bifidobacteria and Lactobacillus. Which both of those are very easy to hopefully properly culture in your gut through your diet. I do not recommend taking probiotic supplements to get your Lactobacillus and Bifidobacteria, because most of them would die off after the probiotic supplement that you're taking, if they're even alive at all. So you want to try to culture your natural flora back, and Jason and I are going to be talking about this off and on in the next few months, through some of the stuff, that blog articles that we're going to do for Fix Your Gut, of how probiotic supplements may not be the best. Maybe it's time for us to get our own natural gut flora back, and we can't do that, especially if you have an appendix. If you do not have an appendix, then yes, it might be possible that you do need to take a probiotic supplement to help out. So if you are having oxalate issues, it might be a good idea to get a Genova GI effects panel done to see if you do have oxalobacter, or if you have bifidobacteria or lactobacillus in your gut flora, because they do test for those probiotics through a GI effects panel. And there have been a lot of studies that show that these bacteria do degrade oxalates that we ingest through our diet. It can help people who have chronic kidney stones.
Yeah, so let's go back to the analogy that I made with the eyedropper of dye and the pool. We have roughly, and this is just a very rough figure, some people have more and some people have less, but we have roughly 100 trillion bacteria in our gut. Now, if you take a probiotic, what is the labeled dose of microorganisms that you're consuming?
Most of the time, it's in the billions. It's hardly anything.
And of that, we can debate about this later, but a lot of these products are not shelf stable, and they, a lot of these bacteria die after 2 days, and so you take them and they basically are dead already, which may have value, they may not have value. But the point I'm making is that you take a probiotic supplement, if you expect to change your gut biome in that regard, it's going to take a long time to keep consuming and making sure they reach where they need to and compete with the other bacteria. It doesn't make as much sense as it would be to adjust your diet to where that you feed the bacteria or the genes in the bacteria that you want to keep, and you starve the ones that you don't want. It's going to be a much bigger. You're going to have a much quicker and more pronounced effect if you do it that way.
The problem with that, Jason, is most people don't want to do that. They just want to take a pill, and sadly, there's no pill. That is the most effective way that you can change your gut microbiome, is just changing your diet.
Yeah, if we look at a lot of things, like they're saying, like, all right, well, processed foods are okay. We're eating, like, look at sausage. What kind of effect is that going to have? With the types of nitrogen and what that has on the calcium channel, and we also have to understand that bacteria they're different. Like, if you look at one bacterial cell and say, what can this bacteria do versus a colony of bacteria, and how they communicate with one another, and the effect that those have, and you introduce certain types of nitrogen and you change that communication pathway and the electro signaling, and it's a lot different. So it's like, go ahead and eat these overly processed sausages or something. Oh yeah, it's fine to eat microwave. Who says, like, who was it? There's some blogger that's like, go ahead and eat microwave foods. That's fine. I said, if you put broccoli in a microwave and you microwave it and it comes out still green, right? That means it's got all of its nutrients. But what they don't understand is that how the microwaves change the broccoli on an electrochemical level, and what kind of impact that has
by pumping it with more EMFs than your standard oven would.
Yeah, that and the food that comes out, it's going to have an effect on the bacteria in your gut, and their ability to communicate. The type of nitrogen, the type of the nitrogen communication component is changed at that point, and it's like, okay, no, it's safe. Keep feeding your family microwave food. That's fine, because we eat it all the time and we're still alive, so that must mean it's safe. But yeah, it's more convenient to eat like these processed foods and these microwave foods. It takes like a couple minutes, but taking a probiotic is not going to even make a dent if your diet is poor.
No, it's not. I mean, the only time I really suggest probiotics now is possibly if they do not have an appendix and they need to recover after antimicrobial treatment, or if you're in the hospital. If you're in the hospital and you're at risk for C. diff, you might want to take some Saccharomyces boulardii. But other than that, do I recommend probiotics when I coach my clients? No. And they have results of being able to get back normal flora once they fix motility and their diet.
Yeah. Well, that was a rabbit hole. All right, let's go on to the next one. It's a very long question. All right, how much truth is there to the idea that the color and consistency of things like butter, eggs, and beef indicating their nutrient content or the quality of the diet of the animal. I'm curious because for the past few months I've been using some local grass-fed butter that isn't very yellow. But recently I bought some Kerrygold and Organic Valley butter, and both of them are very pale in comparison. The Kerrygold is softer than the other two, which I hear is a good thing. And the local butter is a little harder, almost has a slight cheese-like flavor. But these store-bought butters definitely do not look yellow to me. Do you guys have any theories of why these supposed grass-fed butters would be so much lighter? Or is it possible that local butter has been hacked somehow to look more yellow? Also, the grass-fed beef I get does not look yellow, but they boast the beef is all grass-fed and finished. The animals spend 90% of their lives in tall grass prairie. The mention of legumes is part of the diet, though. Is it possible that a small amount of legumes in the diet would change the color of the nutrition of the beef? All right, so yeah, there are some ways that farmers can hack the colors of their products. They can add dye. That's one thing that definitely happens sometimes. Now it's harder to do with eggs, to like inject your eggs with dye, but
I mean, can't you feed the birds like azanafaxin, for example, and it would
yes.
falsely make the eggs orange?
Yeah, you can do that. There are some tricks.
Well, the egg yolks, why I say eggs, but yeah.
And you can even feed them like artificial carotenoids, or I think another pronunciation is like carotenoids or something, but I say
I call them carotenoids because they make carrots.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's like the English, like the American dialect uses the ah a lot, and in every other language it's like ah. So carotenoids is probably.
But for pastured eggs, isn't it important too about the structure of the egg itself? If it's strong or if it's brittle when you crack it open? I mean, shouldn't a good pasture-raised egg be harder to crack open than?
Well, a lot of it's genetic too.
Okay.
I raised a lot of chickens and had a lot of eggs.
Did you get scabies?
Did I get scabies? No.
Yeah, I got scabies from chickens. I brought it home when I was a kid, and I brought it home to my mother who had systemic lupus, so she had a very hard time dealing with the scabies infection that she had.
Wow, that's not good, but that's also pretty random. Like
yeah,
I used to farm chickens. Did you get scabies?
Yeah, I just thought scabies were common with chickens. So.
Maybe I never got scabies.
Hey, did you hear about people getting salmonella from just handling chickens now because the bacteria is?
What do you think is going to happen when we're giving chickens antibiotics in their feed? Like, what do you think?
It's so funny that the USDA was like, I don't understand why people are getting salmonella from just handling chickens, and I'm like, well, maybe. I mean, you can get it from turtles. That's why turtles are illegal in North Carolina, because you don't wash your hands from touching turtles. But turtles are slimy, I mean, it's not like a chicken's, you're not touching, chickens so much, But yeah, chickens are giving people. I would never touch a chicken. I'm too scared to.
Yeah, a lot of the color is genetic, but so you can get, for instance, a bird that processes carotenoids a lot more efficiently, and you can put them on a port diet, and they'll still have nice deep colored yolks, and you can do other ways to hack it too. But I wouldn't say it's extremely common, and if you take farmed eggs from pastured chickens, not pasteurized chickens, but pastured, meaning they live in a pasture.
You don't want pasteurized eggs.
No. So, I mean, you're going to get a higher chance of having, better stuff. Now, the butter and all dairy products, you will see a change in yellow. Even I used to get this raw milk, and you look at it in a glass, and it's like not quite orange, but it's definitely not white. And
The
so
same with
people might,
goat's milk.
what?
The same with goat's milk too.
Yeah. So you might look at it and be like, oh, that's gross. It's not white, but it's actually better for you because,
Yeah,
if you think of like carrots being orange, the same
more vitamin A.
carotenoids or carotenes are in, well, it's not technically vitamin A. It's vitamin A is then synthesized, can only be synthesized from light. Um, the retinol is vitamin A, and you think of like the retina in your eye being able
Yeah,
to produce light. So it's like it's like the sulfonated version of vitamin D3 can only be produced from UAVB light. No, AVB light. Yes.
are you gonna have a correction for this?
Yeah. UAVB. Yes, that's right. Anyway, so yeah, and again, it depends on the environment of the animals, whether they're outdoors or indoors, and the environment. But yeah, if they're outside eating grass, they should have fairly. I mean, you won't see orange fat. Well, you sometimes see it in buffalo because they have uh, a little bit different function, but in cattle, you don't want to see white fat. You can see it as being like slightly brown or something, but you don't want to see it as being like white. Like you see, if you go and see like a grain-fed meat in like your meat market, you'll see the fat, you'll see the marbling as being very white,
It's nasty.
which you don't want. You want it to have like a brownish color to it. It doesn't have to be orange.
If you had to eat conventional meat, would it be better for you to not eat that fat and just stick with the lean muscle?
Yeah, I mean, the difference is, okay, so a lot of the mycotoxins that are coming from the antibiotics that they're getting, because antibiotics are basically a type of mycotoxin, they're feeding to the animals. They're fat soluble, so where are they going to go when they're finally bound and stored? They're going to go in fat, and so there's a lot of toxins that are going to be showing up. And they've done tests, and a lot of people are like, no, that's stupid. There's studies that have found absolutely no antibiotics in the meat of cows. Well, okay, but what about metabolites? What about other toxic chemicals? What about endotoxin and these other things? Is that not in there? And the answer is yes, it is. So
But
you're
they're
not
not testing for it.
Yeah, exactly. They're only testing for the antibiotics. And also you look at the glutathione synthase levels and they're way down.
That's a way to get around it. Wink, wink.
But I was just traveling. I was in San Antonio and I ate at Fogo de Chao, which is totally red zone on the bulletproof diet because it's not grass-fed beef.
Sometimes you got to treat yourself.
Well,
you got to treat yourself.
yeah, it doesn't taste as good to me, but it's like it's incredible. But anyway, I don't think we're gonna get a sponsorship from them after that. So, but anyway, yeah, I ate the fat. There are more polyunsaturated fats too in the grain-fed.
Which ain't good.
It's not that there's more omega-3. See, people have this misunderstand that you're going to get more omega-3.
Beef doesn't have a lot of omega-3 in it at all.
No.
That's a common misconception.
Well,
I think grass-fed beef has around 100 milligrams, if that.
Not maybe for like a pound. Yeah.
Yeah, a pound does.
The difference though that you're going to get, and the reason why the fat tastes different is because
omega-6 ratio.
Well, no. There's more monounsaturated fats. There's less PUFA in general. Yeah. And there's more monounsaturated, so that level's changing. And monounsaturated fats, in this case, are going to be healthier for you. And you should try to get your omega-3s from seafood sources.
Problem with seafoods is the good old Pacific Ocean, Fukushima.
Dude, we are butchering this question.
I know.
Is about like,
we're getting to some important stuff now. So.
Yeah. So the butter and. So the reason why the butter would be softer is actually because of the PUFA content. And so if the butter is soft, it's going to have more polyunsaturated fats, which is an indication that it might not be entirely grass-fed. And
Unless they
so,
soften the butter. There are techniques of doing that.
yeah, but in general, like you put it you put it in the refrigerator, and the polyunsaturated fats are not going to solidify as much as the saturated, monounsaturated fatty acids. But let's see what else. This was a large question. So, why would the store-bought grass-fed butter be lighter? Well, simply because there's not as many carotenoids in the butter. That's a hard one to hack. So the yellow dense stuff is going to be superior. Legumes and cattle. I don't have any data on that. Do you have any data on that, John? Legumes and cattle?
Not necessarily, but I would assume depending on the legume that the cattle ate would depend on mycotoxin into the meat. It just all depend on what they ate, and whether or not it would be good for the cattle or not. Are they feeding cows peanuts?
I don't know that they're feeding peanuts, but is a soybean a legume? They feed them a lot of soy.
Yeah, actually, it probably is a legume.
There's some milo. What is milo a grain? I don't know. There's like a milo feed. There's like a bunch of different.
Well, the soybean
feeds.
that you feed the cow is, of course, going to give it more PUFA, obviously.
Yeah, it will.
So,
but I think like
healthy.
the thing is like a cow's digestion is very fragile. Like if you
they're ruminant animals.
Yeah, they can eat like there's the weirdest stuff that can just take out like your entire pasture of cows. And I was wanting to talk to Glenn from Alder Spring about this because like he's in South Dakota, I think, right? So he's dealing with a lot of colder climate stuff. And I was always told growing up that if the cows eat like clover after a frost, the clover produces some kind of polyol that the cows can't handle, and they just blow it up like a balloon, and they die because they just can't handle all the gas. So.
Yes, and that's because cows have so much methane-producing bacteria that if you start favoring the hydrogen-producing bacteria, they're gonna.
Yeah, I saw my grandpa, like this happened to a cow once, one of our favorite cows, and my grandpa tried to save it. He just took a poker and tried to relieve the pressure, and it doesn't really. Yeah, it didn't work. The cow still died, but he says it's the best chance it has.
Should have given us some atratinil. That was one of the original studies for red kombucha, was to greatly reduce methane in cows.
Well, I'm sorry, we totally messed up that question. So
hope you got some good information out of it. If not, write back any more questions that you have for that.
Maybe it was entertaining.
Long tangents.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna have to move on. What are the best ways of preserving veggies from a home garden in order to make nutrients and avoid potential anti-nutrients? I've got an abundance of cucumber, zucchini, that will likely have a lot of kale, Swiss chard, romaine lettuce, and various herbs. Is freezing the best way to go? What's your thoughts on pickling? Freezing. If you have to store it that way, freezing's okay. Pickling will likely destroy some of the nutrients, because like a lot of these, the reason why a lot of these antioxidants are so good is because their ability to donate electrons is so high. That potential is really high, and when you store them in water and you let the microbes get to them, that potential goes down. So when you test them in a lab, it's like, oh, let's see if this stuff still has vitamin C in it. Yeah, it looks like it still has vitamin C, but is it reduced vitamin C, or is it, so it's not really the same.
What about drying your herbs? Maybe putting them in some sort of sealed container.
I don't really like that at all.
Okay. So to eat your herbs fresh then?
I would rather, well, eat them fresh obviously is the best. Like eat it right off the plant. Like I go out to my herb garden and I just pick what I need and add it to my dishes, and I get the most flavor that way. But
yeah, that's what I would do too.
If you've ever had like fresh picked oregano,
it's probably strong, ain't it?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's just completely different than anything you can get in the store. And so what happens to it from the point where it comes out of, and true, I do take care of my soil and all this other stuff, but what happens from the point where you dry it and it gets to the store? Well, a lot of the oils and stuff evaporate and degrade. And
Yeah, because they're volatile oils.
yeah, but that's just the herbs. You know, for cucumbers and zucchini, I would say that
you can pickle them, couldn't you? Especially the cucumbers, no problem, as long as you make your brine yourself.
Yeah, and really the cucumbers that you get from the store a lot of times are just they're not fermented. You can
dyed.
Actually, you can put them through the fermentation process, and that's fine. Cucumbers and zucchini aren't extraordinarily high nutrient foods, so you can probably get away with that. But you know,
cucumbers are high in molybdenum if anybody cares.
Yeah, your kale and Swiss chard are pretty high, so.
But you got to take the anti-nutrients out of them, all your oxalates and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you've got a genetic predisposition of those, you cook them up. If you can freeze them, you can freeze Swiss chard, you can freeze kale. You can't really freeze romaine lettuce too well.
No, it won't.
You need to use your lettuce right away.
Yep.
Give it to a neighbor or something. It's not going to store well at all. But you'll notice that the lettuce that's coming out of your garden is going to last a lot longer than you would if you bought stuff on the shelf. So, but yeah, your kale and stuff is going to start coming up in the fall anyway, and there's not going to be a lot of productivity coming out of your garden at that point. Your cruciferous stuff, your broccolis, your kale, those are going to start coming back at that point. Usually when it gets hot, those things die back. So there's not going to be a whole lot happening in your garden except for that. So you can eat those foods at that time. Zucchini and cucumbers, you know, those are going to be late spring, early summer, and so you'll have the, you know, depending on your growing zone, obviously, if you're probably further north than I am. So all of these things that you're describing, they're coming in at different times. So it's not like you're going to have all this stuff all at once. And so you should be okay. You should be able to pick and eat from your garden, be okay. Of course, I have a family, so it's easier for us. All right, next question. Don't many, if not most, bottled water companies, the chief among which is Aquafina, use tap water? I didn't know that Aquafina was a chief. It's like Chief Aquafina.
I can answer this question. Yes, majority of them use tap water. Next question. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the truth. They do. I mean, where do you think the water is magically going to come from? Artesianal wells? They can. Like for example, I drink Evermore. Now, do I drink it all the time? No, I don't. High alkaline water is bad for digestion. Let's go ahead and get that. But I do have silent reflux, or I did. I think it's actually finally gone now, magically. And it did help deactivate pepsin, so it served its purpose. So when we're talking about water, we're talking about the source. We're talking about how clean that source is and what minerals derive naturally from that source. We're not even going to discuss your typical Dasani, which comes out of the Atlanta, Georgia tap water from the Coke factory that's down there. Delicious. Or Aquafina, you know, which comes from Pepsi. So, you know, most of those are coming from your taps. Now, they are reverse osmosis and most of the time ozonated. So they're clean as you're going to get. The majority of them aren't going to have any fluoride or anything like that. But the problem is water comes in this nifty little container called plastic. Yeah, and plastic, of course, contains BPA and other plasticizers. Even though you want to look for where it says 1 on here, polyethylene, there's still some nasty plasticizers that I'm getting from this that aren't BPA. But
they're not technically BPA, but they're still estrogen mimicking.
Yeah, they're still there.
But I mean, they're not that fat. They're not that water soluble though, right? So
they're not. They're safer, but you're still getting it. It's like pick your poison. Okay. Usually.
Oh wait, that wasn't a question, direct.
No, that'd be the worst.
Okay, continue.
Okay. Usually goes like this. The softer your water bottle, the worse it is because they use more plasticizers, probably some more phthalates, something to, I butchered the heck out of that word, but something to soften the plastic, okay? The harder the plastic bottle is, usually the better it is. Not always, but usually. Actually, I got a polypropylene mixture right here in my stomach. It's called a hernia mesh. It's been there for 14 years and probably causing a lot of inflammation and so on and so forth. That's a tangent. So the best water you could possibly get would be in a glass bottle. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The problem with that is super expensive. So what do? You either, if you're going to buy a bottle of water, maybe get some Mountain Valley. It comes in a green glass bottle. Drink that. And the only problem is it's going to cost you so much money you can't afford unless you're rich. So what do? You can go get a reverse osmosis filter at your house and put some rare minerals to get the water back into shape. That can help. Or an ozonator. Ozone in water is fine. Ozone in your body necessarily isn't the best in the world. So there are ways that you can, if you decide to get water from your tap, you can turn it into drinkable water through distillation or reverse osmosis. But remember, every time you take stuff out of water, you're taking the good stuff out and you're taking the bad stuff out. So you want to make sure that you remineralize your water. Because a lot of our mineral waters, they have minerals in them for a reason. Other than taste, it's good to balance the pH and it's good for the body too. You don't want to drink straight reverse osmosis water unless you're trying to take toxins out of the body. And you don't want to drink that for a long period of time because it'll start leaching minerals. So they say. But to answer your question, yes, most bottled water companies use regular water. Look for spring water, even though technically spring water can mean a million different things too as well. Always check your water source. Evermore comes out of the Covington well in Louisiana. They have a documentation, third party, that it comes out of that well, and also what I'm getting when I drink it. And yes, with any water, unless you clean it up yourself, you are going to get some minerals that you wish you were not getting them. So you got anything to add, Jason?
Not really. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, just to summarize, yes, they're tap water, but they're filtered. It's not like they're just taking it straight from the tap into the bottle and just closing the lid. I mean,
it's better than your faucet.
Oh, a lot better.
But you have to outweigh the toxins in the faucet or the toxins in the plastic.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's easy because most people have PVC pipe running in to their house, so that's
correct. So they're getting it anyway.
Yeah, they're getting a lot more from the PVC because that's a hard plastic.
Now they do sneak some fluoride in bottled waters, so watch out. It has to label that they add fluoride to it, but there are some bottled waters, like Pure Life does have its own separate fluoride brand that adds fluoride to the waters separate. Yeah, so always be aware of that.
Yeah, and it's sodium fluoride too. We have to distinguish between sodium
natural fluoride and sodium. Fluoride. Yep, and sodium fluoride, of course, is not something you want to put in your body.
Like you'll see a lot of people, especially if they drink well water, and they'll have like fluoridosis, like on their teeth from drinking out of a well because it's calcium fluoride. But sodium fluoride, like they add to the water, that's a toxic byproduct. It's like a chemical waste product
of aluminum manufacturing.
Yeah, and so they found a creative way of dealing with that toxin. It's by making us drink it.
Yep, and stamping a big old rat poison symbol on it.
Yeah, the thing is, like with the fluoride, the sodium fluoride, your body mistakes it. If you look at the valences on a lot of these minerals, and the reason why a lot of these heavy metals are bad is because your body gets, I wouldn't say your body gets confused because that's kind of anthropomorphic, but with the valences of these metals,
it says I can use them pretty much, so it tries to use fluoride as iodine.
Yeah, they're the fluoride and iodine have the same valence
because they're halogens. Same with
yeah, and so sometimes biochemically they can be exchanged for one another, and that's bad because when fluoride is substituted for iodine in a reaction, it's not good biochemically, because although it works in that reaction, it doesn't work in when it becomes the substrate of an additional reaction and the density changes. And you also have to think about the bioelectrical implications of that too.
So thyroid hormones are poorly made from bromide and fluoride.
Yeah. All right. Wow, we're running out of time. We might be able to get to another question. The next question that we have is pretty long, though. What are ways in which we could damage fats? I know cooking and high heat is one of them, but what are others? Can blending damage them? Okay, so with fats, we have it's not really like protein. We don't have different shapes and structures. So when you heat up a fat, it's not going to change shape and denature like it would be with a protein. The thing is, when we heat up fats, sometimes what can happen is that the weak bonds can be broken off, and we end up with like a radical can come in, especially with polyunsaturated fats, and it can knock a double bond away, and you get these free floating particles that are harmful. So that can happen in high heat environments, and it does happen in high heat environments. And the rate of heat and the length of and the duration of the time under heat, it determines how much of that's going to happen. The other thing, I guess the more damaging thing probably with fats is the glycolipids that form from cooking. So if you have some sort of a carbohydrate and a fat and you heat it up, sometimes they bind, and that's not always a good thing. So like your fried foods, where you take what are they fried in, like flour? They take flour, they batter up some Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Potatoes turning into acrylamide.
Yeah. You can get like acrylamide, and there's a lot of there's that, but there's also a lot of these glycolipids that form that are very toxic, very carcinogenic. And glycoproteins can form also if you cook meat that has fat. Sometimes they can bind, and when they're binding unnaturally, like in the process of heat, it's rarely a good combination. And some of these glycoproteins there'll be the immune system will trigger, and you'll get inflammation. You'll get a cascading inflammation response just from that. But I don't think that. I mean, if you're cooking your food, and there's been studies on a lot of this stuff, and especially like in seafood seems to hold up a lot better because it's higher in DHA, and so the DHA because DHA is such a good electron donor, it tends to block a lot of, I wouldn't say block, but it mitigates a lot of the damage to the other fats and to the proteins too. So it's okay. I think it's okay to cook your seafood, your fish. I think that, I really like eating sushi, but I think that you don't lose a lot of the benefit from cooking it, and you get less tapeworms.
On occasion too, if you want to grill your steaks, I don't see any issue with them as long as you're in good health, because caveman sure ate a lot of charred foods back in the day.
Yeah, the issue with that though is that there are certain bacteria in the gut. I'm actually writing an article about this right now for Fixture, and they can create endotoxin based on the response. Again, we have these nitrogen components, like I was talking about earlier, and there's a genomic layer. I guess there's a genomic field that gets disrupted from certain forms of nitrogen compounds and nitrates.
Would high antioxidant herbs like basil and oregano, would that counteract that from occurring?
Yeah, but only on the surface level. You got to understand what's going on inside. But anyway, I'm not saying it's going to kill you or anything, but you should probably. Optimal. Yeah, it's definitely not optimal. Eat your steak rare. It tastes better anyway. You want to taste the steak.
Unless you have Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis.
Well, then don't eat steak at all.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But if you had to eat steak, well done.
Yeah, but you don't have to eat steak, I don't think. Nobody's ever shown up at my house and been like, "Hey, let me in. Are you eating
I need the
steak?"
steak.
I know you're not eating steak.
Don't blend your steak either.
Don't mess with me. You better eat your steak. I mean, yeah, the American Beef Association has got some good lobbyists, but
They
man,
do that down in Texas.
no, they don't. I live in Texas. They don't. They don't show up at my house. All right.
But what
What's the
about
next part
blending
of the
though?
question? Blending. Okay, so no. Well, what's going to happen? You blend fats, so that where are the hydrogen bonds located in these fats? I mean, they're located in the glycerol backbones. And so let's say that you separate, well, let's say that you blend it with high enough shearing force to break down one of these glyceride bonds on the glyceride backbone. Well, it's no big deal. I mean, and you have to look at the shearing potential versus the force of the hydrogen bond. I don't. This is like probably going to be wrong off the top of my head, but let's just say it's 100 kcals of force that's going to have to take place. Well, let's say your blender gets up to that point. Is it going to really cause harm from that? No, I don't think
What
so.
about oxidation from incorporating oxygen into it?
No. Oxidation is not incorporating oxygen. Oxidation is the
No, but I
loss of an
mean not
electron.
not at the same time. But I'm talking about later on, like if you blend something and you let it sit there.
You blend something and let it sit there. Okay, you're like beta oxidation. The thing is in fats, when we're talking about fat oxidation, beta oxidation can occur, and that's actually a good thing. So if you look at the literature and you're seeing stuff that says oxidation, a lot of times that's good. But what's bad is when we have these OH groups that are coming out. We have these like peroxyl. We have these like these hydrogen peroxyls that are forming, and we have lipid
Lipid
peroxidase.
peroxides and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah, and that's not what we want at all. And we have to understand that it's just not in our physiology, but in the microbiome that's doing this as well. And this could be another podcast all by itself on the lipid peroxidase. It's bad. You can test for this. You can get a blood test and it'll tell you what your levels are. And if your levels are high, like you need to get it looked at because it's very, very bad.
What about
But
real quick about what about light and fat? Component of that. Like, 'cause you have a bottle of olive oil and you just set it out in the sun. Not in the sun, but set it like by the windowsill in a clear colored bottle.
well, now we're headed into Jack Cruz land a little bit. And we look at the work of like Fritz Popp of the Biophysics Institute and his work on different autofluorescence of different fat molecules and stuff. But yeah, you know how like a solar cell works, where you have, geez, we're over time, but we have this like solar cell, and the photonic particle hits it and it converts the light into energy, into
That could
electricity.
be stored into a battery.
Yeah, and so a lot of times, fats. If you look at the fat hydrocarbon chain, I mean, it's just like a NASCAR speedway. Is that what you call it, John?
Yes, NASCAR. No, that NASCAR speedway down there in Charlotte.
It's just like this oval-shaped deal where all the electrons are turning left. Just like around this track, they're just turning left, really fast, turning left, and that's good. And so sometimes, yeah, like with your PUFA, I mean, you've got like saturated fat. Everybody's turning left, and it's going great. And then you got these PUFAs with the double bonds, and it's like, uh-oh, pit stop, and then it's causing congestion and stuff. What happens is a photon can come in and blast through. Well, not blast through, but it can disrupt that double bond and tear it apart. The double bonds are actually weaker than the single bonds, and it can come through. But things like DHA are very resistant to that. And in fact, they conduct more electricity through different emissions of light and different autofluorescent frequencies. Like you have the excitation particle, which is indicated in nanometers, and you also have the fluorescence, which so you shine something onto it and then you get something back. And there's like a whole communication system that's happening. I don't really have time. We're way over time. I don't have time to get into. Again, that could be a whole nother podcast, and we could even get Dr. Cruz on the show to talk about some of this stuff too, and sort of the implications that are arising from biophysics. But that's really all the time we have. We're over time right now. So and we didn't get to everybody's question. We still have a couple questions left, but we'll get to them next week. So sorry guys. It's just we were gonna get to all of them, but
we joshed around too much. We're sorry.
But John wants to talk about scabies all the time. I don't know what his obsession is with scabies from chickens, but whatever, man. I hope that was worth it. You disappointed.
I'm sorry. Fans. We'll definitely get to the questions. I'm trying to liven it up a little bit.
That's going to be the death of this show. Like, you could point to that as why Fix Your Gut, the live stream, is no longer on the air. They'd be like, "What happened to that show?" Be like, "Oh well."
It turns out that is that when we jumped the shark?
Obsessed with chicken scabies, and yeah, charred. Switch charred.
That's when we jumped the shark, huh?
NASCAR, turning left. All right, guys, have a great week. We'll see you tomorrow. We're doing an interview with Steve. What's Steve's last name?
Stephen Erb. It's going to be on. It's going to be more relaxed. We're going to talk about conventional medicine because he's a nurse. We're also going to talk about Jason and him are going to talk about some kickboxing and stuff like that, which me, I'm not into that. But it's going to be a more relaxed interview tomorrow. We're going to have some fun with it. We're going to make some jokes. It's going to be good.
And then on Wednesday we're doing a live show on the toils of the supplement industry. So check out that one as well. Thank you for supporting our show. We appreciate everybody sending in the donations and everything to keep our show going. We're looking into creating a podcast to go along with this, so to get some storage space to be able, because these MP3 files that we convert are pretty big. So to host them and everything, we're going to have to pay additional hosting fees and whatever, and get an RSS feed so they show up on iTunes. That's sort of the next level we're going, and your donations are helping us do that and be able to keep this show alive, because we're not made out of money, and so we kind of need this thing to be sustainable. And John and I kick in as much as we can too, but we both have families, and you guys have families too. But if everybody contributes like $1, then we can meet our financial responsibilities and get it going. So that's kind of the future of where the short-term goal of where this is going is we're going to start converting these videos into RSS podcasts, so you can download them on iTunes and listen to them while you're on the freeway and not crash your car because you're looking at John's beard. Like, what's going on with John's beard this week? Is he going Amish again?
I once had it down to here, so maybe I can get it back down there one day.
Reka from the forums is not going to watch the show if your beard gets out of control.
I can't help it.
She's our only female viewer. If you look at our demographic, it's like the percent just says Reka, and then it's all the guys. The rest of it.
We're just a big sausage fest, huh?
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next. We'll see you guys.
Bye, everybody. Take care.